The Remembering Them podcast is a platform for people to share stories and memories of their loved ones who have passed away. The podcast was created in memory of Dad, Bob Cecil. May he rest in peace. Your hosts, Mark Cecil and Ryan Thwaites, acknowledge the rich history and importance of storytelling within Indigenous culture.
My name is Jorgie Skeen, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet here today. Today we're meeting in Meanjin, and those traditional owners are the Yagara and Turrbal people. And I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge my people, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and extend that acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening in today.
Hello, Ryan. Welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome back yourself.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, good. How are you?
Good. Awesome.
Very good considering we're about to hit up my favourite part of the podcast. 3 clues for you this morning. Try to guess where our guest is from. Clue number 1. There is a 1st century Roman country house in this city called Getty Villa. It houses an extensive collection of Greek, Roman, and I'm going to say that again because I'm not entirely sure how to say this. There is a 1st century Roman country house in this city called the Getty Villa. It houses an extensive collection of Greek, Roman, and Etruscan antiquities. Etruscan antiquities.
You've never said that word before?
I haven't. Have you?
No. Oh, man. I have no idea.
I had to look it up, and I believe it's Italian ancestry.
Oh, we're in Italy.
Yeah.
Man, that's
so
tough.
I should have just changed it and said Greek, Roman, and Italian.
The first clue is always a pass for me on this. Let's just say London.
Okay, no, it's not London.
Yeah, cool.
Clue number 2. There is a mural in this city affectionately known as the Great Wall of the City. It is almost a kilometre long and one of the longest in the world of its kind. It depicts the history of the state through the eyes of women and minorities.
Wow. Are we in like Virginia?
No.
Okay.
3rd and final clue. This could give it away. Oh, maybe. No, I don't think it will. By 1930, this city produced a quarter of the world's oil, playing a major role in the city's development.
By 1930, it produced a quarter of the world's oil.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought that would give it away.
This city?
Yes.
Wow. What's an oily city? Good Lord. It makes me like wonder about the Middle East or something. But
it's a major city. You'll know it.
Yeah. But because of the time, again, I'm like, this has got to be America. Let's say something like Houston.
No, I had to be really careful with the clues because I felt there were quite a few ones that could have given it away. So I went pretty obscure. So we're actually in Los Angeles, California.
Oh, yeah, well done. Yeah.
Holy
crap. Like a quarter of the world's oil from LA.
Yeah.
What?
I had no idea of that either. I thought that was a really cool clue that definitely wouldn't have given it away.
And the mural? That's cool as well. Wow.
Yeah, so the Great Wall of Los Angeles. Obviously, I couldn't say that. Almost a mile, quarter mile long, I think. I'm not sure of the conversion. I know I converted it, and it's almost a kilometre long in our metric system.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I just Googled it. It looks sick. That's amazing.
So our guest today is from Los Angeles, California. She is a life, relationship, and grief coach. She's a wife and has 2 daughters and a doggy. She loves documentaries, researching topics, sleeping, and hanging with her family. Our guest today is Natalie Lamb. So welcome to the Remembering Them podcast officially, Natalie. It's great to have you along after a few false starts.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we've tried a couple of times. I think the first time it was a missed calendar invite, and then the second time we'll blame Zoom with the mistiming. So hence why if people are watching the video of this, they'll see Ryan and I in completely different shirts for our intro. We didn't quickly get changed in between.
Well, planning on our part, we should have lined that up.
I know, I was going to, then I thought, who cares? We'll just, people will understand.
Never mind.
Do the intro get changed?
That's the beauty of trying to coordinate guests overseas. So thank you for joining us all the way over from Los Angeles. We normally ask our guests before we jump into the who we're talking about today. We know about the, I guess, stereotypical things to do in LA, but if we were to visit, what are some things you love about the city that you'd recommend people try and do?
You know what? I mean, I've lived here my whole life. And my parents actually are from Los Angeles too, which is a rarity because most people are not, have generations that have been here. I think Los Angeles people miss a lot of the hidden gems because they concentrate on the ones everyone always goes to, like, the beach, of course, which is gorgeous. The many different ones, Malibu, you have South Bay, Manhattan, Playa Vista. It's a lot of little enclaves in there that are really nice. I mean, you have the tourist places, right? Like Hollywood Boulevard, where everybody, kind of flocks to. But there's a lot of cute little cities that no one talks about. There's some cute little, like, Studio City is really cute. And you can go in there, Ventura Boulevard, a lot of stuff you can look into. You can go all the way out to like Palm Springs, which is like an hour and a half from LA, which is, nice desert. Some nice little shopping out there too. But it's a lot of, don't, like, if you do come out here to visit, plan a day to just explore, to like go in a lot of different directions and see what you can find instead of staying on the beaten path.
Perfect person to ask too. Someone that's been there and is a generational person from LA. Really good person to ask. So thank you for that tidbit. Now, if you'd like to start by telling us who we're going to be remembering today and what happened to them.
So, man, I've had so many losses, unfortunately. And my mom was my biggest, I think, loss. I was 28 or 27. This is like 22 years ago. Actually, she died on Mother's Day. And this Mother's Day that's coming up, it will be May 12th, which will be the exact same day, of when she passed away. Sudden heart attack, completely unexpected, completely shook my entire world, reframed it completely. My daughter was like 18 months when she passed away. And so I am thinking we're going to do this together, right? My mother was like the purest person you could ever meet. And I don't say, I mean, a lot of people say good stuff about people when they're gone, but I would have said this when she was living. She was just like you rarely find, and I have never found anyone that loved to the extent that she loved, right? And was, you guys made me cry, as beautiful as she was as a human, right? Like, she is my inspiration to be good, to stay pure and true. And no matter, like, her, I think, greatest legacy is love. And she had this unique ability to make everybody feel seen. Like, you would never be in her presence and not feel like all eyes were on you, or like everything that you were telling her mattered to the nth degree. She was like that person that supported. It didn't matter what you were doing. It could be like it's gonna fail, right? But she would be there 100%, sitting there with you, going through the storms with you. Like, she was just that. So it was like, how do I do this without her, right? And it was, for me, I mean, some people are able to grieve, I think, quicker than others. For me, it took me probably 10 years to get my feet on the ground. And I did it out loud. Like, I wasn't embarrassed to be grieving. I wasn't embarrassed to have the whole of her continue to be a whole until I figured out how to build a life around the whole. And I think that was my greatest epiphany, was that I never had to feel her whole, that I just had to figure out how to live with it. and still honor her in it. And that is really, I think, if I had not gotten that epiphany, I probably would still be a mess. But that was my epiphany that I get to keep it. And whenever the whole manifests, it just manifests. Like it, I could be a hot mess in a quick second. And I don't apologize for it. And I probably made a lot of people uncomfortable because I couldn't stuff it. I had to just do it out loud because I feel like if I didn't, I would drown. And I had a daughter that I had to be present for. And because she was the mother that she was, I had to be that mother for my kid. And that was also my inspiration to figure out how do you grieve, right? Because in my community, we don't talk about grief. We don't walk through the steps of it. It's, and then I'm also a Christian, so then you put that faith base in it, and it's, they're in heaven and everything is supposed to be, fine and perfect, and you don't have a space to be a mess. You don't have that space to fall apart and just wail and, be angry with God and fight with him and figure out how do you process this. And then you add in the components of family, and everyone's grieving differently. And so it's how do I carve out enough space to honor her fully? And I committed myself to that. Like really committed myself to the journey of grieving and learning it. And so I think I'm better. I know I'm better for it, and have done my best to try to inspire other people to grieve out loud, because I think it's how we keep our personal lives. I like believe like even though they pass away, my relationship stays. Right, I'm still in a relationship with my mother. She still gets to know everything about me. She's still fully aware of. I mean, in my conversations, I've never stopped talking about her. I've never stopped including what I think she would say or how she would guide me. But it's, you make concessions through this journey to figure out how do you keep it going.
Natalie, I normally ask guests to describe their family members, but I think you've done it perfectly there. What was Mum's name, and what lessons did you learn from her before she passed away?
Her name was Cynthia. And oh man, the lessons. The lessons were, very much so God first, but not in a like way that you think of as being just this colloquial term of, you serve God, right? It was this ability to embody the love of God. Like it wasn't just like her, it was like you knew God was in her and performing this work in her to be able to love to the extent. She, and I did not learn this until after she passed, because I had to go through the journey of her courage, because I did not realize how courageous it is to love, to give and receive it. Sometimes we can do really well with giving, but to receive, you have to be in the space of vulnerability to allow somebody to know you need to be loved by them, and to open yourself up to the giving and receiving. She did that so beautifully. She really did believe in trying to live as fair as possible. Like right was right and wrong was one of her statements she loved to make. Um, she was like ridiculously in love with my father. Like their relationship was really special. But gosh, she loved him. Like it was almost phenomenal to watch. When I was a kid, I used to be like, that is so ridiculous. Cause like everyone in her circle and everybody knew like Cynthia loved Howard. Like it was not a question, it was no doubt. And she saw that as such a gift, and then how she loved her kids. Well, I have two older sisters, how she loved us so uniquely, you know. And that takes being committed to people, to learning them. One thing she used to teach is, you have to learn who you're loving. You have to not just be about you, but you've got to learn them. Like, what do they need to be loved? How do they need to be loved? What does love speak to them? And she would have that ability to like hone in on where people needed the love and concentrate it there to build them up. Um, if I can give that to people, which I do aim to, I'm never going to be as good as her though, because I'm like watching and like I'm a replica, right? But she was the original. Just beautiful to watch.
So just pressing on that point of um, giving and receiving love, and then I was it the fact that you didn't realize how good she was at it until she was gone, and you didn't see it that in other people, or what was that realization moment?
That I always realized that she was really good at loving people and taking care of people. I didn't understand that it was a courageous act because I would see her oftentimes as looking weak because and she would love people that did not love her back sometimes. She would go hard for people that would never go hard for her. But like, how courageous is that to not live your life based on how others treat you, but to be able to stand firm in your dignity and your integrity and your foundation of this is what I want to give the world. And if it's received or not, I'm giving it. Like most of the time, like if you're in a relationship with people and they pull back from you, you pull back too. Like I'm not gonna keep going hard for you. Now this part I haven't perfected yet because I can pull back. But she would like keep going, and it was like, how? Why? When I was younger, I'm like, you're so weak for doing that. And then it was like I went through like this catharsis and kind of reimagining her and walking her shoes and trying to understand her so that I could better embody her greatness. And that's when it clicked. I was like, God, that's so courageous to love that well. And anyone who would meet her would say that was her. Um, it's like hard to even. It seems unfathomable for someone to hold that, which it was. Like she was this. My sister met with my cousins this weekend, and they were like, "You just never met a person like her. Like you just never met a person that pure." And mind you, her upbringing was not that. Like hers was not based in love. She was not loved well. But it was like she made a commitment to be loved. And maybe it was because she didn't get it, but man, she did that well.
It's funny that you said that because I was wondering like where she got it from, if it was like from her parents or not. But it's weird that generation sort of typically didn't get that. I don't know, it was a different time and they sort of had to like
It was a
figure it out
different time.
themselves, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They did. And she like really figured it out.
That's
Um,
crazy.
it's and I always tell people like that I talk about her like all the time because of that factor, right, of just, and it was pure. It wasn't tainted with things. It wasn't to get from. Like she didn't love well so you would love her back. She didn't do things for you in order to have even reciprocity all the time. It was like just, it was, she could not do it. Like when we describe God, for people that believe in God, it's like he's love, right? That's his definition. That's what he does. He can't do anything other than that. And that was her. It was like she didn't know how to do anything other than that. Blows me away. Every time I really envision her, she blows me away.
Natalie, when she passed, you mentioned that it was sudden. Were there any underlying health issues, or was there an element that she had any issues with her health? And then with that suddenness, how did you get through that? You mentioned you had a young child at the time. What got you through that difficult time?
So she had some other health issues, but nothing fatal, right? It was just like rheumatological issues more. And so that you can live with, right? You know what I mean? It's a pain, right? And she, of course, dealt with the pain of it, of, not feeling well all the time, but nothing that was like, okay, this is her end or this would be her end. Um, and so it was just a sudden heart attack. I can, vision the day, the morning my dad called because, of course, it's Mother's Day and we're all getting ready. And it was this, plea for me to God, like, don't do this. I live about an hour from my parents. So it was the hour drive of agony of what was it, what happened. And then when I pulled up to the hospital, I knew immediately before I even got out the car because everyone was standing outside kind of waiting for me. And so it was that immediate. I fell to the ground and I'm like, God, I told you don't do this. Like, why would you do this? But I tell you this, when I went to go see her, because they allowed us into the hospital, most gorgeous, and she was gorgeous just because, okay? But oh my God, it was as if like 20 years or so had been taken off her life. She looked so beautiful, so peaceful. Um, it was like, as horrible as it is, this is actually the face, her hair. She had like this long black hair and gorgeous, gorgeous woman. But it was like back to when she was like 30, right? It was like the peace that was over her, in time brings you peace of knowing she is at peace. Um, but the agony, I didn't feel that way when that happened. I'm there now, 20 years later. But you had asked the question of how did I get through it, right? It really was, I made a decision that I have to raise my child well and I have to be present. And it was this thing that I said to myself, I could not let her grow up. And then she becomes an adult and she looks back and says, you weren't here for me. And my only answer can be is my mother passed away. I did not think that would be an adequate answer. Not for her life to have missed it, right? And to have been supported and loved and cared for the way I was. I could not give my daughter a legacy of not knowing that. So I immersed myself. I'm a life and relationship, and now I'm a grief coach as well, into grief. I researched it from every angle possible. I researched it from a tribal space to the indigenous, of course, the Western, but I went everywhere and was like, I gotta figure out what this is because no one talks about it. And so I pulled out elements that I said I resonate with that. I can walk through that. I mean, I took a course with the African priestess, and hers was actually the cathartic thing that I did that when I realized my mother was um courageous. Like it was this process that she took us through. It was like all envisioning and like meditative and stuff I ain't never done before. Okay. So it was like I am walking in any lane that appears to me to help me walk through it. And so I have like grief support groups now, and I do, personal grief and family coaching, but I take them through all of it. Like it's not just, okay, let's cry. It's like, let's embody the whole thing. And I'm not going to immediately, because it's a year from now, tell you that you're depressed because you cry every day. Like I get to cry every day if I want to. If I need to, and I tell my group, take a sad time, carve out 20, 30 minutes every day if you need to. Because what you realize that as you open yourself up to all the feelings, because we know that, grieving is far more than just sadness. It's fear, right? The fear of what can be, the fear of losing another. It's anger, right? It's all the frustrations. It's all of the emotions that we don't talk about, right? Being despondent, not being able to get your way back, the physical things that happen, right? Like your cognition is not right sometimes, and I end up getting like high blood pressure for like 10 years. That told you to me 10 years. And I'm like, I've never had this, not in the family. This is crazy. But I couldn't. I was like, I just got to treat it. But I knew what it was. I knew that it was just, I was off kilter. And I just took me a long time to get back. So like, I'm the testament to like when I do my groups, like I'm not this like clinician person standing here just giving you this. I'm telling you, we walk this, right? So you're able to relate in a totally different way. And for me, if I can bring people on a journey, I can live it out even louder. And so I invited people to be on the journey with me, not embarrassed, not ashamed. Um, let's walk it out loud so we can figure this out. Because, like I said before, like my community, we don't do that. We don't do it out loud. We don't, it's like the first week, okay, everyone's there. You get a whole lot of dishes, get people there. And then as the weeks go by and after the funeral service, you really are left by yourself. And you look at other cultures and how they do it, like you stay connected for a long time. And so I'm like, I got to create connection so that we can learn how to do this together instead of always doing it just by ourselves.
Natalie, you mentioned before the quote that your mum used to say was right. How did that go?
Right was right and wrong was wrong.
I thought that's what it was. I just didn't want to get it wrong. This was true. Right was right, wrong for wrong. Are there any other quotes or sayings that remind you of your mum that she used to say all the time or that you
Oh,
still use today?
my mother, we have like a little language within our family that are not real words, but or we just be making them statements that that don't really make sense. So my husband is crazy. Me and my husband been together for 35 years, but so he's like been growing up in my family too. So when I lost her, it was like him too, right? Like it was a very, very communal thing for us. Oh man, I wish I could think of some of the crazy stuff she would say. It just comes out in the craziest moments of just you're talking. And he's like, no one says that. I'm like, no, really, people say that. That's a saying. And he's like, no one's ever said that before, right? Oh, one of her favorite ones was there's a sock for every shoe, right? So like you would see somebody, everyone deserves love, and there's a sock for every shoe. So you just have to find if you're the sock or the shoe, you just have to find the one. And you're gonna find it because she was big on love, right? Everyone wants to be loved. So it was like I carry that when I do especially when I do dating. So I'm like, it's a sock for every shoe. You're gonna find the sock and the shoe that fits. And then we added to it. I'm like, but then sometimes you just have to wear flip-flops because sometimes it's not gonna quite work out, right? But yeah, she was funny and in her own way, like this little brilliance, right? She was creative. Like she could design stuff. Like she was like a wedding coordinator as well. So she would put on these elaborate weddings. And her thing was, I don't care how much money you have, we will make this amazing. And so if somebody came with 500, it would look as if, they spent, 5,000. And like she would just, because like everybody's day has to be special. So she would go out of her way to do that. And my parents had a church as well. So, like every year for her birthday, and she started this probably maybe 6 or 7, 10 years before she passed away. They would do a celebration for her, but instead of people bringing her gifts, she gave gifts. So she would give everyone there a gift in honor of her, just for showing up. And no one had to bring her anything. But that was just like her. Like, and it wasn't like, and everybody knew it wasn't like still today, people talk about it all the time. Like, man, who goes to a birthday party and receives a gift? Like, that is not the custom. But she was like, oh, I don't need anything else. Let me just show you how much I love you on this day that I was born in order to just love back. Yeah.
It's funny you say that. It's actually my son's fourth birthday today. I don't think that would fly if I, woke him up and said, "Hey, where are my presents?"
Exactly. I don't do that either, right? And that thing,
I've
oh
never
my
heard of
God,
that before. Yeah.
that used to bother me so much. I'm like, mother, that is so ridiculous. So ridiculous for you to give birth gifts to other people on your birthday. But it's like, then you come to appreciate it because it's like, who does that? Like, that's crazy. And to do it genuinely from your heart, that she's like going out and finding stuff to give to all these people that are there. My parents' church grew to like almost 1,000 people. So I'm talking about like, 300 or 400 people that she's finding gifts for. Why? I'm like, that's crazy. But, then I had to just accept this is who she is. Like, this makes her happy. It makes me happy. I'm like, okay, be happy.
I can't imagine that. Christmas is stressful enough trying to buy for different people. So absolute hats off to her. Natalie, do you have a favorite? So I know you probably have many, 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 but do you have a favorite story or memory of your mum that sticks out?
um, oh my goodness. If I have to pull one out of a favorite. Um, oh gosh. That should be like super easy to pull up, but it's just so many that I would love to bring. But I will say this on my baby shower. We actually were twins. We dressed alike, and you've never seen a baby shower like this. The amount of stuff that this woman purchased for me was ridiculous, right? I mean, and she fitted my daughter from 0 to probably almost 3 years old. Okay. Um, insane. And she was so, I mean, to become a grandmother was like her biggest desire, which was so why it was so heartbreaking when my daughter was only 18 months. Because she doesn't really fully remember my mom, right? But the bridal shower, so my mom didn't drive. She was a person that liked to talk with her hands. So she had to tell a story. She's like driving and moving her hands, and then she would break hearts. We never really let her drive. And I remember that morning because I was at her house before we went to to the baby shower. And I'm like, Mom, just let me drive. But I'm like, really pregnant. No, I will not, right? I am the mother, and then she's not a person that ever really takes charge, right? So I'm the mother, I'm driving you because this is, like my gift to you to take care of you now, to be able to do all this stuff with you. But it was just like, I could go back like in childhood and think about the little things of, and me and my sister, my middle sister, we laughed so much because she, like, her discipline was like the most loving little discipline you could ever imagine. So you're getting told off by her. It's like, okay, baby, I need you to stop doing that. Like, give me your hand. Here's a little pop. Don't ever do that. And that's like the extent of it. And so, I mean, my sister, my middle sister, we remember this. So she was like really mad at us. I don't even remember what we did. And she like, set us on the couch and gave us this little stern talking to. And we were like, oh, Mom, stop. And I remember we ended up getting like a pillow fight with her over her trying to discipline us. All in love, right? Nothing harsh. But it was like that was just her. Like, she couldn't be harsh. She couldn't just scream or yell. Like, I don't ever remember her yelling at me ever. Um, and my father could be like extreme sometimes, right? Like, he could raise his voice when he got angry and that kind of thing. But she just always, it was always a baby. And like people, like it's people in the church would say, I would rather get cussed out than to have her reprimand you, because it's like it feels good but bad at the same time. It's like, it's the way she would do it, and her words were always soft and smooth, but she got her point across still with a baby, and it's like, who does that?
Natalie, how do you and your family honor your mum today? I feel like you probably safe to assume that you do that every day in the work that you do and the grief journey that you've been on and immersing yourself in that grief and all the learning that you've done. How do you and your family personally do that for your mum?
You know what? And it is incorporated in so much because I have always talked about her. So it is almost as if my daughters know her. And so in everything that is a replica of her or a memory of her or a gift or a lesson from her, it is always implemented like this is what your grandmother would say, or this is what your grandmother would do. Of course, cooking is a big deal because she could really, really cook. My dad's grandmother was a chef. So she, like, when my parents got married, they were like 18, 19 years old and lived with my grandmother, my great grandmother. And so she taught her how to really cook, right? So like I have all her old cookbooks and like some of her old recipes that I just happen to remember and have her write down. You know, as you started your own family, you want to bring in those traditions. So like the cooking thing is still like a big part of it. But it is, I mean, it's not one specific, it's like how we live. Like the life I live is an honor to her, right? She is, like I say, she is a conversation piece all the time. Me and my husband, you know, and even my daughters who, you know, have never really met her, they still be like, oh, grandma would love this, or I got this from her. My daughter's an artist as well. So, you know, she's like, I know I got this from her. And I'm like, yeah, you did, you know? So it's like she never got forgotten. And in every way that's really livable, you know, like not just the words of her, but the life of her is still very much so beating in our life. Yeah.
That totally makes sense. And I have to ask, Ryan probably knows this is coming, the food, favorite dish or something that is the go-to that reminds you of her, or her favorite dish even.
So yams is my main dish that I cook from her. My husband, she taught my husband how to make prime rib. And so that's like a very much so a go-to. Um, Lasagna was like her favorite, and I have not gotten that yet. My middle sister has gotten it, but I have not gotten that licked yet. But she was like also a person that could just cook things. You know, like you have a bunch of stuff in the kitchen and you have no recipe. She could just throw it all together, no matter what she threw together, it tasted amazing. So I do have that knack that I can just create out of nothing, and still have something pretty tasty. And then I tell my family, I'm like, listen, I've never cooked this before. And I don't even know what these ingredients fully are, but let's give it a go and see how this tastes.
That's amazing. Natalie, final question for you. Traditionally, the hardest question of the podcast, but given your experience, I think you're well equipped to answer it. If your mum was in front of you today, what would you say to her?
Uh, of course, I love you, right? But thank you for being love. Thank you for being the embodiment of what true love really is, right? And having the courage to love not just your family, but everyone outside, um, to be the essence of beauty, of integrity, of honor, of God, like to have lived in a house, um, that his presence was real, not because you read the scriptures, but because you was with a person that embodied all of the attributes of God that we wish more people would body that say they believe in God, right? Um, but you know, I'm glad she's at peace, that I am. And you know, I'm gonna definitely see her again.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that was a tough question.
Yeah.
It's actually the second last question because it would be remiss of me of not letting you go and not asking this question. Again, given the work that you do and how you immersed yourself in the grief journey, single piece of advice. I know it's tough to probably single it down to one little bit of advice, but if someone is going through something similar to yourself, that what you went through with that sudden departure of a loved one or a mother or someone who is the centerpiece of love for the family, like you've described your mum,
Yeah.
what would your best piece of advice would be for them?
Allow yourself to grieve and allow yourself to mourn and understand the difference of both. Grieving is this inner work, it is the pain, it is the sadness, it is all the emotions that get stuck in us. And mourning is letting it out loud. And we always are grieving to a degree, and we actually, you know, we're not really that bad at grieving, but we're really often terrible with mourning because we keep it all in. And so, you know, I would say allow yourself to mourn and don't put a time frame on it. It's going to change. It's going to ebb and flow. It's going to evolve. It's going to get pulled back. Sometimes you feel like you're starting at one again, but grab grief's hand and let her teach you, because she can teach you some amazing gifts that you never thought would come from losing somebody, even someone as precious and as connected and as your life, like your heartbeat. But grief has lessons to teach us about ourselves, about humanity, about love, about continuing on, about creating legacy. Um, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be afraid of embracing it, even though it's scary. But if you can see it as a friend instead of a foe, you can actually walk the journey, and you do it differently because everybody does it differently, right? But don't deny yourself it because you're afraid that you will get overwhelmed by the waves. Learn to ride the waves, right? And let them come over you and ebb and flow. And I mean, like I tell my group, I am like an amazing surfer now because I have learned to ride the waves of emotions, right? And it's put me very much so in touch with the gamut of emotions, because we don't talk about the gamut of them enough. But oh my God, there's so many out there. And so now I look at everything more with curiosity than fear. So I'm like, what is this going to teach me? This pain is breaking me, and I let myself be broken. But there's something on the other side of it too that I can embrace and grow from and just, aim to be a better human. And she definitely is the pillar that if God is highest, but she's sitting right underneath him.
That's great advice and a great description at the end there. Love that, Natalie. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Remembering Them podcast and remembering your mum, Cynthia. Really appreciate you giving up your time, and upcoming Mother's Day to you and to her. Thank you for
Yes.
joining us.
Thank you.
So, Ryan, that was Natalie from Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, California. Good chat. Good chat.
Great chat. Natalie was one of those guests where you could just ask a question and let her run with it, which is great.
Yeah, no, but and also not be bored. Like it sounds horrible, but like yeah, if someone runs with the question, yeah, sometimes it can, you know, it's like some people I know that are like older. It's funny, like like a lot of older people when you chat to them, I get a little bit bored. Maybe I have a short attention span, but some like I meet people that are the same age and they don't bore me, and I think like there's an awareness about that, and I think like not that Natalie is old, but in the same sense, like she has an awareness of like what she's saying to the point that keeps me interested.
Yeah, I think she's got that lived experience too with
Yeah.
obviously her mum, and then more recently, if you're a Patreon member, you'll hear about her
Yeah, you
brother
got to
and
start
also
up,
her
man.
dad. Yeah, yeah.
Good chat.
That was a really, really good chat. I know that we say this about every Patreon guest, but that was a really emotional chat.
Yeah.
So get on board. Patreon members, it doesn't cost a lot. $6 US, $9 Australian. What do we say? Euro? It's about five, I think. So
5.6.
yeah, check it out. That's available to you. The other thing that I took out of our Patreon chat was the legacy part of things that Natalie is looking to set aside for her daughter with a written journal or something that she's going to leave to her. And obviously we've got the My Legacy message
Sounds
service.
familiar.
Yeah, sounds very familiar, but in video format. So we encourage people to check that out. Natalie, check that out as well. I think you'd be interested in what that service provides. A video message to your loved ones, often unexpectedly, as your legacy after you pass away. And then finally, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to all of our channels, especially the Patreon, as I mentioned, if you don't want to miss out on that awesome chat with Natalie and also our previous guests from this year.
Yeah, man, I agree.
agree with it in total.
No, I
I'm
agree with
glad. I'm glad you
everything.
do.
Yeah, like yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I second all of these viewpoints.
Thank you for agreeing, and it's like a good co-host.
Yeah, no worries, man. I'll see what I can.
And thank you, mate. Thank you for joining me for another great chat to another great guest, and looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely, mate. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
The Remembering Them podcast is created for entertainment purposes. Mark and Ryan are not licensed mental health professionals. If you would like to discuss your mental well-being, several free resources are available in Australia. Information about these services is available in the podcast notes. Please take the time to contact a loved one today and tell them how much you appreciate and love them.